G'day people, Max here from Evidence-Based Football Manager. This is part 7 of my training analysis video series for FM23. Today we're going to have a look at the various types of training sessions in FM23, which are the basic building blocks of training schedules in Football Manager. I've analyzed 48 different types of training sessions that are available in FM23. The only training session that I didn't look at is match review. I skipped match review because unlike the other training sessions in FM23, you can only choose match review on the day after a match in the game, and it was a little bit difficult to set up the required experiment. But all the other types of training sessions have been analyzed. Analyzing the individual types of training sessions and finding out exactly which attributes are affected by the various training sessions is a crucial step towards the ultimate goal of this video series, which is to be able to construct my own custom training schedule for FM23. So this is how I conducted the tests for today. I used the same test league save file that I've been using for the past few videos, where the players in the test league play 30 league matches per season. I filled up the calendar of the teams of the test league with a single type of training session for the entire season. For example, with the overall training session, you can use it up to 7 times in a single week. So I made a schedule that looks like this. And then what I did was I filled up the entire season with this training schedule that consists of a single type of training session. The majority of training sessions in FM23 can be used up to 7 times in a single week, but there are some exceptions. I'll display the list of those exceptions on the screen right now for you to have a look. After filling up the entire season with a single type of training session, the league was simulated until the end of the season. At the end of the season, I recorded the attributes of the players so that I could find out how much the attributes grew throughout the season. 10 independent trials were conducted for each types of training sessions. All players were 20 years old at the start of the season. The reason for this choice of age is because if the players are too young, they might grow really well regardless of the quality of training. And vice versa, if the players are too old, then they might not show too much growth regardless of what training schedule that they use. I reckon 20 years of age is a good balance where the players still have some growth left in them, and that growth can be maximized with the use of a good quality training schedule. And let's have a look at the results. I have a series of tables here. So all these values represent the average amounts of growth from 10 independent trials, i.e. 10 independent season-long simulations. The top rows in each table represent the average growth of all outfield players in the team, and in the following rows, the data is broken down into the various playing positions. Cells that contain positive values are highlighted in green, and cells that contain negative values are highlighted in red. At the end of each table, I've included a series of data analytics, such as the amount of boost in the CA ratings, the amount of boost in the various categories of attributes, such as technical, mental, and physical, the total amount of boost for all attributes across the board, and also the number of attributes that grew by a significant amount. By the way, when I say attributes that grew by a significant amount, I'm referring to any attribute that grew by more than 0.5 points per season. I reckon an attribute needs to grow by at least half a point per season before you can say that a training session is effective in boosting that attribute. Hence the reason I chose 0.5 point per season as a benchmark figure. We'll take a look at one of these tables as an example. Let's have a look at possession training. So this table is when the players only did possession training throughout the whole season. You can see that a lot of these mental attributes are shaded in dark green, which means possession training was effective for the growth of these mental attributes. The effects on the physical attributes, in contrast, are pretty poor. You can see that many of these physical attributes, including acceleration, agility, balance, natural fitness, and pace, showed 0 to negligible growth. And if you have a look at the crossing and finishing, these two attributes actually went down for all players across the board. And also, if you have a look at the long shot attribute, it went down only for central defenders, which is pretty interesting. And lastly, if you have a look at the goalkeeping attributes, these attributes grew only for goalkeepers, which I guess is an expected result. Now, here's an important question. In the game, when you look at the descriptions for the training sessions, they give you a list of attributes that are supposedly affected by those training sessions. Do those descriptions tally with the actual range of attributes that grow according to my experiments? The answer is yes, they do most of the time, but not all the time. For example, if you have a look at outfield training session, so in the game it says that the outfield training session boosts the aggression attribute, but according to my tests, that doesn't happen. In fact, aggression is an attribute in Football Manager that is fixed for every player. And to my knowledge, aggression doesn't ever change for players in Football Manager. So the fact that aggression is listed here in the game as an attribute that's boosted by the outfield training session is a little bit baffling to me. It also says here that the outfield training session impacts crossing, dribble, and heading, but my test results suggest otherwise. All these players, despite doing nothing but outfield training for the whole year, did not show any growth in crossing, dribbling, and heading. So yeah, I must say that the in-game descriptions for the training sessions are a bit of a hit and miss. Now, I'm not going to go through every single one of these tables in detail because they will just bore everyone. All these tables will be uploaded on my public Dropbox folder as usual, so you can feel free to visit my Dropbox folder if you wanted to take a closer look at these tables yourselves. What I will do instead is to take a look at some data analytics and try to figure out which training session showed strong performances according to the various metrics that I calculated. So what I've done is I've copied all these data analytics into a separate section, as you can see right here, and I've sorted all these values from highest to lowest using Excel for each of these categories. It's basically trying to do a ranking of the 48 different types of training sessions from best to worst in terms of boosting player growth in various ways. By the way, these values are all for outfield players, except this one here, where I've recorded the amount of growth for goalkeepers, but all the other ones are just for outfield players. So let's take a look at these rankings one by one. The first ranking here is for the amount of CA growth for outfield players. Defending training session was number 1 on this list. When players in my tests did nothing but defending training throughout the whole season, the CA ratings of outfield players grew on average by 12.72 points by the end of the season. The second ranking here is for the growth of technical attributes for outfield players. So on this list, the attacking training session was number 1, closely followed by the defending session, which came number 2. The third ranking here is for the growth of mental attributes for outfield players. On this list, tactical training session was number 1. This ranking here is for the growth of physical attributes for outfield players. And here, the physical training session took the top spot, closely followed by the resistance training session. This ranking is for the growth of the goalkeeping attributes. Ground defense took the top spot on this list, closely followed by attacking overlap and chance creation. Ground defense sounds like it's got nothing to do with the growth of the goalkeeping attributes, but when goalkeepers in my tests did ground defense training for the whole year, their goalkeeping attributes grew by the most amount out of all the training sessions, which makes ground defense number 1 on this list. This ranking here is for the total amount of growth for all attributes across the board. This ranking is pretty much like the Ballon d'Or of training sessions in FM23, and on this prestigious list, defending came number 1. Attacking took the second spot, and transition press took the third spot. The last ranking here is counting the number of attributes that were boosted by a significant amount, which is more than 0.5 points per season. So this ranking is also a pretty important metric for assessing the effects of training sessions, because an ideal training schedule should cover as many types of attributes as possible so that you don't have any attribute that's being left behind. So on this list, attacking and defending were joint number 1. Attacking and defending training sessions both boosted 20 different types of attributes by more than 0.5 points throughout the season. Alright, so after having a look at all these rankings, I reckon there's one training session that stands out above the rest: defending. Defending training session was number 1 in boosting the CA ratings and the attributes of players. It also came joint number 1 along with the attacking training session for the number of attributes that were boosted. So I have a feeling that defending is going to be one of the main ingredients in my custom training schedule, although defending doesn't cover every single attribute in the game, so it will probably need to be complemented by a few other different types of training sessions that can fill in some of the holes of the defending training session. Anyway, now that I have the information on exactly how the different types of training sessions behave in FM23, I can finally start the process of mixing and matching different combinations of training sessions to construct a custom training schedule. The end goal is to find that magical formula that can maximize the amount of player growth in FM23, as well as covering as many attributes as possible so that you don't have any particular attribute that's being left behind. So please have a bit of patience, people, and I will deliver to you a training schedule for FM23 that is based on evidence. Okay, folks, that's it for today. I'll see you all next time. Cheers, guys.